Hey, it's your guy Tyrrell back with the interviews. Manchester City have started the season well, but there are warning signs that they could be troubled as it progresses. Fernandinho plays a key role in there. Is he fit to play that role? Does he need help? Don't worry, here at the interviews, we've got you covered. So on this edition of the interviews, we're going to break down Fernandinho's role at Manchester City. So let's get to Manchester City. Started the season very well, still unbeaten in the Premier League. But when you look at them, they haven't really improved their midfield. They were unable to get Jorginho. Fred went to Manchester United. And when you look about Jorginho in particular, someone who's metronomic on the ball from deep, able to play passes, diagonals, control the tempo of the game. You could understand why Guardiola wanted him so badly. However, they weren't able to get him. He's on at Chelsea. When you think about what City have done and the options that they do have, yes, Gundogan can play there. Yes, Phil Foden has stepped up to the senior team. A bit young, but can he be trusted there? Bernardo Silva played out on the right, but can also play centrally and has been given that chance with Kevin De Bruyne hurt. But again, it's Fernandinho at the base, and you have to think, can he still perform that role? In today's video, we're going to break down how teams have gotten at him over the past 6 months and how City have dealt with it well, how they've struggled, and how the Brazilian national team has struggled. So first, we have to get to the World Cup where Brazil crashed out against Belgium. So first, let's start with Brazil. Brazil in the World Cup made it to the quarterfinal up against Belgium. They were the heavy favorites to win the tournament and to progress here. One of the big changes that they had to make in the tournament was the fact that Casemiro was suspended. You think about your holding midfielder. Here in Brazil, they have Coutinho, they have Paulinho, two players that like to get forward. So they need someone to cover the ground. And Casemiro has developed into more of an all-rounder at Real Madrid under Zinedine Zidane. So that's why he played the role to a T. He was able to come across when he needed to, when the fullbacks, particularly Marcelo, got forward, and he was able to play a pass and offer somewhat of a threat with his passes going forward as well. Fernandinho slotting into that role, a bit of an issue, a bit immobile, not able to cover the ground like he once was able to, and he was never much of a holding midfielder. Fernandinho's peak at Shakhtar, saw him as a box-to-box midfielder. When he came to Manchester City, you saw him play in that holding role. But in a holding midfielder, like I said, you need someone to come across, you need someone to be able to dictate the tempo of the game, certainly for Brazil, certainly for Manchester City. The problem here was that he was there, and you were thinking that even in this game, perhaps Casemiro needed some help with Fernandinho coming in. Perhaps Fernandinho needed some help with Renato Augusto coming in to offer some creativity, or have Paulinho drop off a bit and let Coutinho play as a number 10. That didn't happen. Belgium were able to adapt, and they did. They moved to more of a 3-4-2-1. They had Lukaku and Hazard in that space and wider areas, and they ensured that De Bruyne sat on Fernandinho. The wider players and Lyon and Neymar pushed up. Jesus was up front as well, not offering much. Marcelo was pushing forward, which allowed Lukaku the space to run into when he needed to be there, and Hazard fancied his chances against Wagner, which means that De Bruyne was sitting on Fernandinho and looking to pose a threat. And within the opening minute, he did, running at Fernandinho, dispossessing him of the ball, driving forward, and then firing a shot wide of the net. A warning sign that Brazil needed to really shake things up or offer Fernandinho some protection, but that protection didn't come, and we saw it later on. Fernandinho chasing a loose ball, Lukaku able to just brush him off and move forward. Again, you don't want your holding midfielder being pushed out of position, and if Lukaku was able to do that and drive forward, that is another warning sign. You had De Bruyne charging into space and receiving the ball on either side of Fernandinho, and this is when, as a Brazilian coach, perhaps you need Paulinho to drop off. Perhaps you need Coutinho to sit a bit deeper. You need protection in those wider areas because De Bruyne, Hazard, Lukaku were able to find space there. There was one time where De Bruyne shifted over. Hazard's 1v1 with Wagner. De Bruyne lays it off to him. Hazard's able to drift past Fernandinho, drift past Coutinho. Meunier making the overlapping run. He's able to slide the ball into him as Lukaku looks to charge diagonally into the goal. Brazil had their chances in the first half. They did concede early on in the first half due to a ball hitting off Fernandinho. And then the second goal, he was exposed again. How was he exposed? Belgium hit them on the counterattack. Lukaku shifts over to win the ball. He's able to hold off Fernandinho, shrug past him, bully him off it, run forward, sees De Bruyne making the run, plays into him. He fires a superb effort past the keeper, and with that, Brazil go down 2-0 at halftime. Yes, they made a bit of a resurgence in the second half. Belgium were able to hang on. Belgium offered a counter-attacking threat as well, but the game was lost in the first half. Lukaku, Hazard, and De Bruyne all had moments to push forward and bypass Fernandinho. He didn't have help there, and then with De Bruyne sitting on Fernandinho, he wasn't able to really have an effect in Brazil's third, and that was a big issue for Brazil because they never were really able to offer a threat from deep against that Belgian defense. And when you think about it, that was one way and probably the first warnings, one of the few warning signs that we saw that Fernandinho may not be able to play in that single pivot for Manchester City this season. And then when we get to the first game of the season against Arsenal, they were presented the same challenge. So Manchester City's opening game against Arsenal saw them face a similar challenge. However, they were able to overcome it based on the fact that, one, Arsenal were starting to learn how life is under Unai Emery, learning to play out the back. There was their first game together under the manager, and it was going to take time for them to really understand his tactics. So that was one big thing. The second thing was the fact that they were able to exploit space in wide areas, and that was down to how Guardiola set his team up. Basically, what he did was that Arsenal had Aaron Ramsey sitting on Fernandinho, so Fernandinho didn't really get a kick in the first half. They wanted to ensure that the ball couldn't get played through him. So what Manchester City did, and it was a pretty easy ploy, was the fact that they had Bernardo Silva and Gundogan, and they were occupied by Guendouzi and Xhaka. You have Benjamin Mendy, you have Kyle Walker. Walker was able to bomb forward in the early stages, overlapping Riyad Mahrez, and he was able to push forward, which then eventually pushed Mkhitaryan back. Mkhitaryan doesn't want to defend. Here he had to defend. On the other side, you have Benjamin Mendy, who likes to push forward, and what he did was he moved into more of a narrow position, and that forced Mesut Ozil back. So now when you look at it, the midfield zone is pretty occupied, and with Sergio Aguero dropping deeper, that forces the center back to come across. You have 2v1 at the back, and now you can switch the ball out to the wider areas you have Sterling to run at Bellerin, who hasn't been a really good defender over the past few seasons, and then they were able to have Riyad Mahrez run at another inexperienced Arsenal defender and Maitland-Niles, and he was able to get at him before then Lichtsteiner came on, and Lichtsteiner is past his peak and not the greatest defender anymore either. So 1v1 situations, Sterling was able to pounce on that, and then the second half, with Ozil no longer tracking, you had the overlap of Mendy that allowed Bernardo Silva to finish off the game. But when you look at it as a whole, yes, they were able to clog out Fernandinho, but what City did was they congested the midfield zone and they relied on their wider players in Sterling and Mahrez to run at the defenders, and with the overlap of Walker as well, and then eventually the overlap of Mendy, and City were able to pass that test. But then again, other teams had seen this, and it took Lyon in the Champions League to offer another hammering blow to Fernandinho. So then we get to Manchester City and Lyon. Lyon present a different proposition. Manchester City are expected to win. Pep Guardiola in the stands. However, they don't. Lyon drop into more of two banks of four, have Fekir sitting on Fernandinho. Their problem was, with Fernandinho marked out of the game, they didn't really have anyone to get the ball into the attack. They did have a lot of chances, though. They played it through the wider areas, but they couldn't create chances. The problem here, Silva picks up the ball in these pockets of spaces. He darts into combine with Sterling. The pullbacks aren't really getting off. Sterling running at Raphael, cutting in, firing a shot wide, firing Thames efforts at Lopez, firing shots off Denier, but nothing really sticking. But Sterling was their main threat down the left-hand side, causing them all the issues. The only direct player, because Bernardo Silva wasn't offering much on the right-hand side. It doesn't allow him to maximize his talent. Gundogan was getting the ball in good areas. Nothing was really going for him. Gabriel Jesus was drifting out to the left eventually and combining with Silva and Sterling, which led to promising moments. But again, no real goal-scoring chances. And then you have Delph, who doesn't really offer much, although he did fire a shot on goal that probably was one of their better chances of the first half. Then you have Fernandinho. Fekir's able to get onto either side of him, And Fernandinho was culpable for the 2 goals and for some of their best chances. The first chance, again, City have a bit of a higher line, and Ndombele is able to skip past markers, drive forward, and then slide in Cornet, who is goal side of Delph, and Delph just watches him. He's able to break free, round Ederson, but he was ruled offside, so that was disallowed. Then we think about it, the chance, at least the goal. It's a Fernandinho pass to Gundogan. And what happens is Fekir is able to block it off, and then the wide player with Fekir is able to bypass Walker. He drives forward, plays a first-time pass. Delph is unable to clear it, and what happens is it falls to Cornet, who's able to fire his shot past Ederson. Like I said, City were struggling to really build and get their markers into the attack, get their midfielders into the attack, and that was a big problem for them. So when we look at how another opportunity stems for Fekir, it's again City trying to push forward. Stone's able to push up. Gundogan can't get the ball higher, so he drops off deeper. So what happens here is that Fekir ends up losing Fernandinho. What happens is that Memphis is able to track him. So what happens is that Stones plays the ball to Gundogan, who then finds Fernandinho, who's trying to push forward, but Ndombele and Memphis ensure that he's dispossessed. Ndombele makes a tackle. Sheck is able to push forward. He sees Fekir running into the space behind Walker. He drives forward, flashes his shot wide. Then we get to the second goal in the first half. What happens here is that Laporte this time is trying to drive forward, and that's a big problem. We'll have Memphis back. Fekir sitting on Fernandinho. Laporte trying to drive forward. He finds Fernandinho in an awkward position, and what happens? Fernandinho picks up the ball. Fekir nips him from behind. It falls to Memphis, and then Memphis is able to play in Fekir, who fires a great shot past the keeper. 2-0. City not creating chances. They're bypassing Fernandinho, pressing him out of the game, and then it's really easy for Lyon because they defended very well deeper. They had the 2 wide players dropping off to ensure that Bernardo would have to run at them, that Sterling would have to run on them. For the most part, Fekir still sat on Fernandinho, who was able to push forward as the half went on. And then when you think about it, they did make changes, but all of the changes were expected. They end up bringing on Sané, who offered a brief threat. But then again, when Sané comes on, Bernardo Silva moves centrally, but he couldn't offer much. Fernandinho and a few other players were able to get shots on goal, but they weren't getting in behind. They bring on Aguero, nothing there. They bring on Mahrez, no real legitimate goal-scoring chances. They did push forward. They did offer a threat to Lyon, but Lyon weathered the storm, and their first half lead, like Belgium did against Brazil, stems from getting at Fernandinho, pressing him out of the game, and executing on the counterattack, and that could be a way to get at Manchester City this season. You need your holding midfielder to protect that space. If he can't, which Fernandinho looks like he's immobile at his age, to cover that ground, perhaps he needs someone else to sit a bit deeper. Perhaps it's Gundogan, because who else are they going to put there? And if not, you need your holding midfielder to be able to dictate the tempo of the game, and when teams press him out of the game, he doesn't really offer you much, and City have struggled to really find a route. They did against Arsenal, but more teams will be compact and be a bit more organized, so that could be the way forward for teams to help dethrone Manchester City and ensure that they don't win the Champions League. But let me know what you guys think. Can Pep Guardiola overcome this? Is Fernandinho past it? Meet me in the comments below. Don't forget I upload videos every day, and don't forget to subscribe to my channel. And that was your daily dose of the interviews.